Thanks, Riz. And first off, thanks for organising today. What a great speakers, great event, really high quality stuff. I'm going to share my story about EON Charge, a company I founded about 4 years ago. Oh, wrong way. So this is how it all started. That was my Tesla Model 3 that I purchased in 2019, one of the first Model 3s to come into the country. I've always been a technology sort of person, love cars, so this was sort of my dream car that I finally got to purchase from James from Tesla, or wherever he is. I saw him out in the car park. And what I did, I looked around and I thought, where am I going to charge this? There's not many public chargers out there. I like to travel around Victoria. There wasn't many charging points at that time. There was a few around, but not a lot. So I sat down with my brother, who's a commercial electrician. He's been in construction for 20 years. And I said, how about we do this? How about we start building chargers? Nobody's really doing it. There's no one actually doing it at scale. So we sort of had a few, barbecues and thoughts about this and came up with the idea. And that's my brother there, and this is the first charger we installed, which is in Maryborough, Victoria. So this was part of the Charging the Regions project. Probably people are familiar with that. It was funded by the state government, or part funded by state government, and we won that. EV Networks won that, and we were their partner in that. So thank you to EV Networks for taking a gamble on a startup company like us. That project involved installing 22 sites across regional Victoria. And as was just pointed out before, a lot of that challenge was getting the power to those sites. How do you get power to a council car park in the middle of nowhere? How do you get it in Swan Hill? How do you get it in Mildura? How do you get all these sites up and running? So we had a pretty good program of works, went for about a year, and we ended up with 22 sites there. And that basically gave EV drivers the ability to drive from Melbourne all the way up to Mildura and then around that sort of northwest area pretty easily. Before that, it was a real challenge. So it was a really good project to sort of get us started. We learned a lot from that project, a lot of the challenges. And we're also, using the first batch of those tritium chargers that came out, which were cutting edge at the time, replacing their legacy products, which have had a few challenges, but thankfully the new generation products are really good. We've had nothing but great success with those. So following on to that, we went even further with EV Networks as they rolled out their metro network. So we built a whole bunch of sites for them in Victoria as well. And then finally last year, we did another project, which was the Destination Charging Across Victoria program. Probably many people are familiar with that. That added even more charges, and now I think the coverage is, there's probably 100 sites across Victoria now with fast charging, all the way from Mildura to Lakes Entrance to Portland and everywhere in between. Places I'd never even heard of before, like Dartmoor and Murrayville. So I've seen a lot of Victoria, stayed in some interesting accommodation, eaten a lot of Palmers. So 75 sites we've built and over 100 DC fast charger installations across Victoria. So we think we're pretty happy now that Victoria's got a pretty good coverage there. Couple of different scenarios here, which I'll run through in the case studies, but obviously EV Networks is a big partner. Urban Surf up here, which we finished recently. That's a bit of a passion project for me, being a surfer. So I'm really happy to do that one. And that was our decarb grant. And hats off to my wife, Laura, for doing the planning side of that with Melbourne Airport. So you can imagine how good that was. It's like we were building a third runway, the amount of paperwork she had to do. Some other council fleet stuff I'll go through as well. So a bit of a case study here. This is a project we won for a Victorian department. It's on the charger there, so I can say it's Deca. This is one of their regional depots, and what they did there was they said, well, we're getting some EVs, just like commercial vehicles at this stage, and we need some charging. We have no charging, so what do we need? So they looked at their fleet size. They're already getting a couple of vehicles. We don't need many chargers to start off with. What mix do we need? And this is something that's come up many times today is, design your charging infrastructure around your vehicles and also your use case of your vehicles as well. So how are those vehicles going to be used? That's the key thing. So in this case, they had a couple of fleet vehicles which would park at the depot every night, and they can use the slow AC charger over here and just charge overnight. That's no problem. But they also have people who drive from Melbourne. This site is about 4 hours out of Melbourne. So by the time they've driven from Melbourne, most likely they need to charge to get back home again. Hence why they put in a dual port DC 50 kilowatt charger here. So for visitors or for people who pull up at the AC charger, forget to plug it in or something like that, or they've gone out and they've driven further than they had to that day, they need a quick top up, the DC really complements that. So again, this site, they wouldn't need another DC charger if they're going to expand, they would just need some more AC chargers. Some other learnings from this, nobody has enough power, everyone underestimates power all the time. People think EV chargers are like toasters or PowerPoints, so you can just walk up and get, 50 kilowatts worth of power. I don't think people's minds have really, caught up with that yet as to what it means. What does a 50 kilowatt charger draw? And you say, well, that's basically your whole house, and it's 3 phases. So a 3-phase house at 80 amps for one charger, and that maybe sometimes the penny drops then. So anyway, nobody's got enough power, so yeah, grid upgrades, batteries, all that sort of thing comes into play. So timing obviously is a big thing there, but also load management. Load management is going to become key in future. Yeah, but overall this site's really positive, well received. Something else that was mentioned today was training, so training of staff. There's a bit of a changeover process there. So yeah, you've got to come in, you've got to plug the car in, you've got to make sure the light's working, make sure it's actually charging. Just little things like that. Getting people out into cars is a good thing too, to learn that how far does it go, when it says my battery's on 50%, how far can I go? Okay. And people can sort of, I think, conceptualise that, but until you've actually driven it, it doesn't really sink in. You can say you can go 300 kilometres in this car, but people don't know how far 300 k's is until they've actually done it. So, yeah, real world cases, real world uses. Case study here too. This is a water utility here in Melbourne. They already had a bank of AC chargers, and for their fleets are basically back to base. They were covered in that area. They said we would encourage our staff, and also we've got people who just come and go, sort of customers and other people, ministers, whatever it might be. We want them to be able to charge as well. We really want to put EV chargers front and centre, so it sends a message about our sustainability goals. So what they did was we helped them design a solution here with 3 by 75 kilowatt chargers. It's right near the main switch room too. It's another plus, and it's also right near the main gate, which is just down here. So these are all behind the gate, they're not public chargers. And staff come and use these, they're all free to use. Visitors come and use them, they have really high utilisation rates and they're very well received. This site, again, has got heaps of solar, they've got heaps of energy, they see it as a value add to their staff, so they provide it free of charge. It helps soak up the solar usage during the day. Yeah, and like you said, people can take that energy and eventually go home, vehicle to grid. That's another story though. The final case study here was public charging. So this is for City of Stonington. So they had a decarb grant as well, and we won the tender there to design and install that for them. So it's a public charger in a really highly visible location in Glenferrie Road, Malvern. Again, gets a lot of use. Again, it's aligning with council's sustainability goals. So I think councils have been really supportive in the EV transition. A lot of these things are not commercially viable in most of the cases unless you're running a really big network. So the fact that councils do this at a sort of break even, and sometimes at a loss, I think is really admirable. One thing I will say that I'm glad is changing is the chargers are now being charged, drivers are now being charged. I think free charging was great in the early days, but its time has passed. It's sending the wrong message now. You don't expect to go to a fuel station and get free petrol, so you shouldn't expect to go to an expensive piece of equipment and get free energy, basically. So I think it's really good. And also the other offset there is the cost the revenue they get from that goes to the maintenance of the charger, which is another big thing. Something that was overlooked in the early rollouts. I think people got money for a charger, and they didn't really have budget to then maintain it, which was lead to some bad, poor customer experience. Yeah, so some of the learnings, a lot of this has been talked about, so I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, define your requirements, usage patterns, driver behaviour, look at your power upgrades, just imagine they're going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. Load management is going to be just a no-brainer. Like you're putting in 1 or 2 charges maybe, but as soon as you go beyond that, load management is key. So when you're thinking about that too, think about interoperability, what sort of load management system is going to work with all your charges, and the rest of the building. You might have a building management system you have to integrate with. So it's not just about the charger at all, it's about all the communications. Is it going to be on 4G, is it going to be on Wi-Fi, is it going to be on Ethernet? Does it have to talk to the BMS? How's it going to talk to that? All the chargers talk a thing called OCPP, which is the Open Charge Point Protocol, but they all implement it slightly differently. So it's like, speaking English. I mean, everyone speaks English in this room, but everyone speaks it slightly differently, and you might have an accent if you come from somewhere. So sort of like that. OCPP generally works, but yeah, there's some manufacturers who are very loose on their interpretations of it. So just be aware of that. And obviously maintenance. Maintenance is a key thing there. AC chargers are pretty low maintenance, to be honest. They probably need an annual inspection if they're getting used regularly, and that's about it. DC chargers, there's a lot more moving parts. They're high energy equipment. There's a lot of things. Some of them have liquid cooling systems. There's a lot of things to maintain on there. So yeah, definitely allocate some budget for that.